Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Anyway, folks, how's it going? Welcome aboard. We have in the house from Brooklyn, New York, we have AVQ. How you doing, AVQ? I see you have some shorts for us to play. Patrick Magner, how you doing, Patrick? Meow, he says from Houston, Texas. Hello, relatives. E2247 from all over. Michelle Jacobson, welcome aboard. Admiral Jeffrey R. Cunson, man, I think is how I say it. Tanny B and others, thank you so kindly for being here, folks. We are going to have a great show for you today. Paul Fleming out of Atlanta, Georgia, welcome aboard. Lowry M. Yakish, welcome aboard. Hey, folks, Joe, welcome from Los Angeles, California. How are you doing today? Well, I don't know. I kind of got behind by watching a whole lot of the hearings with Pam Bondi. And I can tell you, Pam Bondi is what a very interesting lady she is. So the one person that I loved the way they interviewed her was Jasmine Crockett. But what can I say? Anyhow, let me tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to start today with an interview that I did with Professor Ian Reifowitz. Okay, we're going to start there. It's going to talk about stereotypes and Donald Trump. Then we're going to go into that piece that how Jasmine Crockett line drived her. And then followed that, I want to go over, but first of all, Trump has said the economy is great. Are you kidding me? But you know what? I'll tell you, I'm going to merge that into something that I did this morning, an explanation I give this morning. But without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to Ian. And after that, it's about a 15-minute video, an interview that I just did with him out of SUNY, New York. I think they call it a SUNY Empire State University, SUNY. So let's do that, and then we'll move on to all others. Here we go now. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. Today's guest is Professor Ian Reifowitz of SUNY, a scholar of political communication and the author of Riling Up the Base, Examining Trump's Use of Stereotypes Through a Multidisciplinary Lens. In this book, he explores how Donald Trump strategically deploys stereotypes, racial, cultural, religious, and national, to mobilize political support, shape narratives, and redefine the boundaries of belonging in American politics. His work connects political science, psychology, media studies, and history to examine how rhetoric can energize supporters while destabilizing democratic norms. Ian, how you doing today?
I am doing well today. Thanks, Egberto. It's always good to be with you and to have our conversations, which I always enjoy very much, even if they're on topics that are not super exciting. That are not super happy.
Well, you know what? The thing about it is you make the topic exciting, man, because I think in as much as it's not a good thing, it riles people up enough to say, we got to do better. We got to do something about it. Now, we go back a long time, the days of daily editors at Daily Kos and all that good stuff. You've been writing for a very long time. You've been a part of the body politic for a long time with your input. So it's great to have you and see that you have put a whole lot of that in writing, which I think is Very important.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we've had some good times at the Daily Coast Netroots Nation gatherings.
Oh yeah,
that's where we first met in person. But yeah, we go back a long way, you and I, and I've always respected what you do very much.
Well, that Netroot stuff is the largest conglomerations of progressives every year in the United States. But anyway, let's get busy. First of all, what first compelled you to write this book, Riling Up the Base, and what gap in the public conversation were you trying to address?
Well, I want to give credit to my co-author, Dr. Anastasia Carrillo. The project is something that we both felt that we could help each other and complement each other. She is a scholar of communications theory, and I'm basically, I'm a historian, and I focus on political history, political rhetoric. So we decided to do a project that would allow both of us to bring our strengths. So she, looks at these various theories, communications theories, and some psychology-related communications theories, things like muted group theory, group vitality theory, and brings those theories to an understanding of how Trump uses rhetoric, how Trump understands that his rhetoric will, to the degree that he understands, conceptually, how his rhetoric works, and then also, and then specifically how that rhetoric impacts and influences people who become his base. And then I bring in the knowledge of the political context, the historical context, some of the discussions of the political discourse. So we wanted to explore this question: how did Trump get elected? How did Trump become what he is? And so we wanted to look at how his rhetoric operates and try to give an explanation to people more than simply, people liked his rhetoric, or people were worked up. And so they well, why were they worked up? Why did they like it? Why did they respond to it? The people who did.
In fact, you analyze Trump's rhetoric through multiple disciplines. So how do political psychology and communications theory help explain why, and again, I say why, stereotype-driven messaging resonates so strongly with certain audiences? And that is something that we see that's been cauterized in many, that personally, I think if we don't find the science behind that to mitigate it, the country ultimately is in trouble.
Yes. So I don't want to dive too deeply into the academic theories and the literature, because that's not my area within the book. But what I can tell you, synthesizing all that stuff, what I think is important to recognize is this kind of rhetoric, specifically stereotype-laden rhetoric, makes the people who do respond to it, and again, the book is called Riling Up the Base. We're talking about the base. Trump's base is really maybe a quarter to a third of the country. It's not even every Trump supporter. Well, I should say it's certainly not every Trump voter.
Right.
The base are the people who support him unreservedly, who feel like, he gets me. And that connects to the science. So the stereotype rhetoric makes people feel like they are part of a vibrant and vital group. It appeals to some degree to those who have a kind of an authoritarian type personality, because Trump portrays himself as a strong leader. It appeals to people's sense of self. They feel alienated, perhaps, from either changes going on in society or even perceived changes, an exaggerated sense of what kind of change is happening, or if they feel alienated from other kinds of political movements because of rhetoric. Trump makes them feel like they're part of something. It appeals to their self-esteem. It makes them feel themselves like they are vital, both individually and as part of a group. So these are sort of, and I focus more on the political angles of this, but that is more of the theoretical social science. We're not looking at biochemical reactions here. That's not what the book is about. We're talking about social science. But communications theory explains, stereotypes, the hearing stereotypes being used in the mainstream reaffirms the people who are in his base. It reaffirms their beliefs. And so when you reaffirm someone's beliefs, you make them feel good about themselves. You make them feel heard. I mean, there's some more sort of scientific
let me explore that a bit. Let me explore this a bit, because you said we reaffirm their beliefs. Before I ask this question, let me ask it this way. First of all, do you think what Trump does is impulsive or strategic, or maybe a combination of them both?
Right. I mean, it's to some degree it's a combination. But having said that, I think it's more impulsive. I think Trump is who he is. And in 2025, Trump is the same guy who talks the same way he talked in 1985 and probably 1965. It just so happens that he, A, is really rich and famous, so had the ability to get his words out there, and B, happened to talk in a way that struck a chord with a certain segment of the population. Now, I think having seen that, he got somewhat more strategic about it because he could figure out, well, this works better than this. And if we could go into a little bit into the pre-launch of his campaign when you're ready, but I think he started out very impulsive.
So I want to back up before we go there and ask the question this way, because you made an assessment that what Donald Trump has done was to play on where people are within their own how they feel about things, so make them feel better about what they feel. What about lying to them to make them feel something that they would not have felt if they had the truth, and then build up on that?
So I think what he does is he lies to them about facts.
Right.
In order to get them to say, this guy feels the same way I do, understands the things the way I do, and has the same priorities that I do. So that's what I mean. One of the things we see is that, and this connects somewhat to authoritarian personality disorder, but it's not just that. A disorder is the wrong word. Authoritarian personality type. It might be a disorder, but I'm not a doctor. And it's not just on the right. This can be on the left too. The sort of more ideological you are, to some degree, the less likely you are to take in facts that conflict with your hard-won beliefs. I think as an observer, I see this more on the right than on the far left. But I think you can certainly see it in the extremes. And the far right is much larger. Obviously, it's the far right elected president. Anyway, so what I don't know that these are people necessarily whose opinions would be changed by different facts. They're not necessarily. The people who become Trump's base are not necessarily looking for facts. They're looking to feel good about themselves. They're looking to feel good about their identity. They're looking to feel stable in their identity and stable in their status. So Trump comes along and says, yeah, you're right. You're worried about X, Y, and Z. You should be. I am too, and I'm going to help take care of it. Well, that's a very powerful message. There's a lot of other information out there is more fact-based. But I don't know that there are many people who it will appeal to. They have to sort of come to it on their own, at least to some degree. And that maybe is a little beyond my expertise, is how do you convert people? But I think that's a decent start in terms of understanding it.
Okay, well, take us where you were taking us through his launch.
Oh, so this impulsive question, right? So he's very impulsive. You can go back certainly to his earliest public statements in the 80s, very much racially divisive. He has used rhetoric that I would call race baiting, at least, beyond being racist or not, attempting to bait people on race. That goes a long way back. Certainly during the Obama presidency, he was one of the leading, loudest birthers. We know what that's about. But then when he's deciding to run for president, let's say 2014, 2015, what does he do? He's got this style, which is, stereotype based. That's not going to change. But he wants to know, well, what's the right stereotypes to go after? He didn't talk that much about immigration in the 80s, 90s, 2000. It really wasn't his thing. First of all, he loves to hire immigrants. He probably loves to hire undocumented immigrants because he can pay them less, right, to work in his hotels, clean them, etc. And you even see this today. The one kind of economic immigrants, within the economy that he loves are the H-2B visas, right? He likes to give special visas to people who can, clean the hotels. Anyway, back to 2014. He's got a small staff. He asks them to start listening to talk radio, right-wing talk radio, because he figures they already like me because of the birther stuff, but what do they like specifically? He listens to Rush Limbaugh. I talked about a little bit about this in the Limbaugh book, which we discussed 4 or 5 years ago. And he hears that Limbaugh and people like Limbaugh are talking about immigration, specifically sovereignty. America's losing its sovereignty somehow because of open borders. People are going to come in across the border, change the culture. They're going to vote illegally, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they come back to him. And when he writes his speech announcing his campaign for the White House, he comes down the escalator in summer of 2015. He's got one line in there about quote unquote illegal or undocumented immigrants. but he goes off on a riff. He ad-libs from this one line. He talks about, people coming across from Mexico are rapists and drug dealers and murderers, et cetera. And that one line became central to the campaign. And I think that was impulsive and strategic, but he got rewarded. Right, he made that speech and he shot up in the Republican primary polls from single digits to the lead almost right away. And in the first debate, again, he hammered the sovereignty and the undocumented immigrants, and he stayed at the top. And so once he saw that it worked, that's the strategic piece of him figuring out what issue to focus on. But I still think the style is impulsive.
So then when you take a look at your book in a totality and it expansions, what would you hope that those reading your book, if I'm telling somebody, hey, you need to pick up a copy of this book, there's something you're going to get out of riling up the base. What is it going to be?
Well, I would say because we try to give an understanding of not how the brain works necessarily, but how people are influenced by Trump. One of the things we do towards the end is we say very clearly that we're not blaming people per se for being sort of sucked into this. We're trying to look at how this process works in a neutral way. I think we try to even have some sympathy, at least for people who are themselves in an economically vulnerable position or some otherwise vulnerable position, and recognize that Trump is preying on their fears that are real, or at least have some relationship to some kind of reality. Think of it like this. You might know some people in your life who are older people. They were born in this country. They don't speak any other language. They have to call for customer service. They hear people with an accent. They can't understand them, or they don't think they can understand them. They get thrown off. And once they're thrown off their game, they're freaked out and they're scared. So they have this sort of underlying fear of change. Everybody, frankly, most people like stability better than change. Other people, few people don't, but most people are comfortable. And so, especially I think people who are in a vulnerable position are afraid of change. So that older person is afraid that maybe someday they're going to wake up and the country will be very different and they'll be the outsiders. Now, is this fear fact-based necessarily? That's almost irrelevant. But the fear, you can't tell people how to feel. So Trump knows how to manipulate that fear. So I think if we can understand how that works, how that manipulation works, maybe it can help us do some of the things that I think you do such a great job of talking about, which is connecting with people with whom we disagree and trying to maybe find some middle ground.
And I think that's important. And I hope that's what people get out of the book. I think, believe it or not, after reading some of the headlines in the table of content in your book and skimming through the others, my hope is that the people that most read this book are the people who are Trump supporters, because I think it would be interesting for them to see themselves within the book and see what it is that actually got them there. Give me, my final answer is always the same. What should I have asked you that I didn't?
So I wish you could have asked me, or that you would ask me, what is Trump really trying to do with this rhetoric beyond the obvious of winning votes, winning support? And if you ask me that question,
what would it be?
Right, what would my answer be? I would argue that what he's trying to do is distract voters who don't have an economic interest in the policies he actually will implement. And he certainly has implemented policies on the border. I don't want to say he didn't implement policy, but other policies that he has implemented, tax cuts for the rich, loosening environmental regulations on polluters. These are things that do not benefit the kinds of voters who are voting for Trump, who also, let's say, voted for Barack Obama and who also voted for Democrats in the past. We're talking about lower income, middle to lower income, non-college educated white voters, but not just white voters necessarily, but the big movement has been among white voters, although you see in the last elections a movement with Latino voters as well and some others. But his goal is basically look over there at the scary people coming in, the brown people coming in, while I put in an extension of the tax cuts for the millionaires. That was in the original Trump tax plan in 2017 and in the one big bad ugly bill in 2025. So I think that would be the answer I would give you to that question. And that is strategic, very strategic.
Professor Ian Reifowitz of SUNY Empire State University. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you, Egberto. It's great to see you always.
All right, folks. All right. Okay. First of all, welcome aboard, Lynette. How you doing, Lynette? Lynette says, "Good afternoon, Egberto, team, and my Substack friends who participate." And Asterian, welcome aboard, folks. If you want me to call you out, don't forget, give me your city and state. Your city and state. I love calling out our viewers. That is a great thing. All right. Look, last night I told many of you that I really wanted to bring together several things. Right. I wanted to bring together AI, billionaires, ICE, the concentration camp, all in one because they tie in together. And I did that this morning. But I want to do it a little quicker than I did this morning. So I kind of wrote out something here as opposed to the ad lib that I did earlier this morning on our 9 o'clock show. And by the way, it's Mary Brommer from Colorado Spring, Colorado. Welcome aboard and thank you for being here, Maria. Mary, that is. Cheryl Elkins, another 600 people are here. It's growing. Yeah, I think something clicked in the last couple of days, Cheryl, but I'm glad to hear that because we got a lot to talk about. Cheryl, I have a message waiting for you, my dear beautiful lady. And by the way, Cheryl says, Egberto, I am from Virginia Beach. Hey, girl, I love it. We are on both coasts. We have Joe from Los Angeles. We have Cheryl all the way up there in the Northeast, Massachusetts. We have Cheryl here in Virginia Beach, a little further south. I love it. We are all over the country. Anyway, this is what I did this morning. Or rather, this is what I did. I wrote out because in the morning it was rather lengthy and there's a lot of other stuff I want to cover. So here's the deal, folks. I want to tell us, I want to give us a warning. I want to give us an alert. I don't want us to be scared, but I want us to think this. I just wrote this out real quickly, so if I have a few grammar issues, forgive me. And the premise is as follows. There is a thread that run between billionaires making the turn to support front, starting with billionaire prohibiting the news. Let me back up. I better start it again. See, I already found a grammar error. Okay. There is a thread that runs between billionaires making the turn to support front, starting with billionaire prohibiting the newspaper they own from endorsing Trump's opponent to their presence at his inauguration. That statement was really meant to say, do you remember somehow billionaires that otherwise would not like Trump were on stage with him? Wow. That should have started the thing tick-tocking in our brains. The threat gets even more sinister. Trump and his court define the immigration problem as more profound than it is justifying funding with billions of taxpayer dollars huge to create a huge Gestapo-like secret police to kidnap undocumented immigrants and brown and black citizens alike, necessitating the building of ever expanding concentration camps. Let me break right there to explain a little bit further. In effect, you go ahead. First of all, you have it's interesting. All these billionaires on stage with Donald Trump. All right. Donald Trump has been talking about a false immigration fiasco. He makes it believe like the immigration problem is really larger than it is. And they crop cameras, they make things look that like it's so bad. Of course, it has never been that way. I mean, I know you had people running across the border and that kind of stuff, but that was not the real humongous issue that it made it to be. But he had to make it that way because by making it a humongous issue, this is what happens. Continuing. The kidnap undocumented, a Gestapo-like secret police to kidnap undocumented immigrants and brown and black citizens alike, necessitating the building of ever-expanding concentration camps. Going after violent undocumented workers was the false rationale for the secret police and ever expanding concentration camps. You notice they're trying to build these concentration camps all over the country, big warehouses to store 10,000 people all at once. All right, continuing. Uh, Going after violent undocumented workers was the false rationale for the secret police and the ever expanding concentration camp. The question is, why? Why? This is where the billionaire, AI, small farms, destruction, and the aftermath of the purposeful policies to destroy the small farmer and small business with tariffs and the loss of millions of jobs intersect with Trump's secret police and his concentration camps. And here we tie it in. And here we tie it in. His policies is sure to destabilize the country as farmers starve and millions are jobless. When the uprising begin, the intent is to have a large, well-funded Gestapo-like secret police force, aka ICE and CVP, and the concentration camps to rid society of those who revolt. These mechanisms must be built on false pretenses, uh, pre execution, lest they could not get away with it. In other words, while we're not looking, we give all kind of false reasons for building up this third police force. We give all kinds of excuses for building up all these concentration camps, warehouses, people warehouses. And you had to have a boogeyman to fill those warehouses, right? And the boogeyman or boogie person is the violent, undocumented immigrant. That's how we build them. We couldn't ever say we're building these jails for American citizens. It will never fly. But if we're building it for those brown and black people, it becomes easy to do. All right? These mechanisms must be built on false pretenses, pre execution, lest they could not get away with it. As the billionaire reap the profit from the efficiencies and productivity we collectively create with AI and other things, their support for the draconian policies is rewarded with their safety from the masses. In other words, as AI goes out there and gets more popular, as we lay off secretaries, as we lay off vice presidents, as we lay off all these people that AI is able to represent, a percentage of these people are going to get violent. That's just what happens in a society that is going into a poverty state where a large amount of people are unemployed. That's just what happens. Some people get radicalized, some people get into all these different frames, right? So collectively create with these people will start revolting. Well, you have to protect the billionaires. You have to protect those that have jobs and they're going to be well paying jobs. So what do? Well, remember all those warehouses being built? They weren't really built for those brown and black people. Remember all of those thousands and thousands of CBP and ICE officers? They weren't put there to go round up all those Latinos and others. Yeah, they're doing that as their practice session. That's their practice. Well, by building that secret police, Trump gets over two things, and I don't even should say Trump. I should say this crazy sect of the right wing. They don't have to worry about the posse comitatus, right? About trying to somehow make the military generals take false orders. And they are cross state borders because they're federal, right? So therefore, we have this big force now. We have AI having people unemployed. We have tariffs destroying farms. And what happens then? The farmers go out of business, the big agribusiness buy those lands. Small town mom and pop shops close down because no longer can they support these people that are no longer there or unemployed. So Walmart and all these other companies are the main places of business. Okay. And then what happens? Well, then it's all over. When I say all over, I mean, we have entered a new kind of authoritarian state, and our kind of we know how to do things with gusto. Our authoritarianism is not going to look like Turkey or one of these countries. We have a certain savagery of how we do things. Just take a look at chattel slavery, how it worked compared to how servanthood has worked in other places, right? So beware, beware. That is our destiny in the current scenario. That is our destiny, and it's look. The building blocks are being placed here. People can say, "Hey, further, that's not going to happen, or that can't happen." Every new step that we take towards this direction, we constantly say that couldn't happen. That couldn't happen. Of course, it can happen, and not only, of course, it can happen. It's happening. We tested out the limits. What happens when we murder a few Americans? What happens when we murder a particular group of Americans? We've already started testing all these things. That's what Donald Trump's been doing. Testing out how far you can go, how slowly you have to bring us into that domain, right? But you know what? There is a solution, of course. Of course, that reality does not have to be. If we educate the masses to the truth via independent media, we can halt this in its track. Because the mainstream media is just nothing more than a cog to the plutocracy. That's all it is, right? So, first and foremost, Americans must not allow AI to be owned by billionaires whose parasitic behavior has stolen it from us all. Every time people talk about AI and that the billionaires own AI, it infuriates me as an engineer, as a software developer, as all these different professions that I've had. I understand that my knowledge is nothing more than the composite knowledge of what I had gotten from my universities. And the knowledge of that universities was built upon everything else. Nobody has earned a billion. We are all in a collective, and we all together taught each other, and we build on what others have built. But our economic system as designed allows that last person to profit as we leave everybody else behind. So what's the solution again? The solution is education. The solution is understanding how an economic system really works, which we don't teach. The solution is to make sure that with respect, we address those who disagree with us so that we can get them on board when they realize that our train should be moving in the same direction. And I don't mean the left rail and the right rail. I mean a derailment. That which is what we need economically. A derailment, a change. What we need, of course, what I tell all the time, free enterprise, free enterprise with a very, very strong social safety net. The current economic system is on its last straws, as you see. As I interviewed several, Dr. Economist Richard Wolf has spoken about this quite often. Spoken about that often. Let's see. This is also happening in the last year of PDR. Let's see. What is E224? Is the AVQ friends and family go to press ignores them and functioned as only one form of liberal entertainment, being affirmative and a morale boosters rather than hard hitting news. Let's. I don't know what you're saying there. I hope that is saying that we are given damn hard hitting. Here is what you're saying, E2247. Let me know if that's what you really meant. All right. Two, we must rid ourselves of the extractive scourge of capitalism by educating all to how it really works and its dependency on all the bad isms. And what do I mean by bad isms? Sexism, racism, homophobia. xenophobia, all those put together, all those put together, capitalism depends on that. Why? Because when people stop worrying about hating each other, their minds are open to think. And when they start to think, they start to ask the most and very important questions. Why are we doing all the work? Why is it our intellect? Why it is everything that we do, and those few that call themselves the capitalists, why are they the ones that profit from our blood, sweat, tears, and intellect? And don't frame, for those that are listening that think they're like super capitalists or whatever. I don't like to use the word capitalist at all as defining myself. I believe in free enterprise, which means everybody should be able to go ahead and create whatever company they want or work for somebody. All of that I believe in. But what is so important is that people are paid what they're worth. And what they're worth, if everybody was paid what they're worth, it would be impossible for this society to have billionaires. It's that simple. It would be impossible for us to create billionaires if everybody was paid what they were worth. So repeating now, we got to get educated on how this economic system really works and its dependency on all the bad isms, as well as a constancy of extraction as it silences any entity of our country seemingly on the verge to create a parallel system where human rights supersede capital. Where human rights supersede capital. I always tell this story for the people that are new to the program when it comes to how our economic system works. I always talk about antiseptic slavery. I always talk about what antiseptic slavery is, okay? When people who looked like me were slaves, right? Let's see. Patrick Magnus says, and why can a billionaire acquire assets with holdings that are not taxed? That is where our tax system give preferential treatment to capital. You're absolutely right. But the thing, right? I tell people this: people that looked like me in the past were slaves. What does that really mean? We were capital. We were a machine. And this type of capital, to keep it active, to keep it producing money, which is all you want from capital. If you own a whole bunch of rental properties, you don't own it for the sake of owning it. You own it for it to either make some rent from it or to have it appreciate, the capital appreciate, one or the other or both, right? If you buy certain things, you want it to appreciate because it's capital. That's the same thing with slaves. When you bought a slave, right? You got that slave. That slave did work for you. That slave made you money. But to have that slave continue to make you money, you had to feed it, you had to clothe it, you had to house it, and you had to give it health care to make sure that if something goes wrong with it, it's taken care of. It's your machine. And notice I've been calling it it, 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 it. But we have a new kind of slavery because that put a lot of responsibility on your master. A lot of responsibility. And your slave could die. We have a better solution to that. A much better solution. It's called the employee. Right? The employee. Yes, companies now sometimes give you healthcare, but a lot of people don't get healthcare from their jobs. That's why we had to have Obamacare. That's why we have private health insurance, etc. Right? Here's the deal: the employee is the perfect type of slave, which I call the antiseptic slave. And how does it work? It works by saying, "Wait a minute, you're expendable. If you don't work out for me, I throw you out the door. I don't have to worry about feeding you. I don't have to worry about clothing you. I don't have to worry about keeping you healthy. And I sure as hell don't have to worry about anything else about you. If you work out, you work for me. If you don't, bye-bye. And that is where we migrated from chattel slavery to employee. Now, here's the thing. Does that say that I have something against employees? No, I am an employee. Right now, I'm an employee of all of you. But people are doctors, lawyers. I love all of that. But remember what I said earlier. You cannot be, if people were paid their worth, there would be no billionaires. Because the employee should have a stake in where they work. They should have a stake in where they work. And you say, well, I am the one who created this corporation and designed what it was going to do, etc. To which I say, good for you. But can you run it by yourself? No. I mean, my little journalism thing here, I run by myself, right? I run it with AI and a lot of other tools to help out get the job done. But if I decided to go ahead and create some other structure and have to have people helping doing, not because I form it, means that I should have orders of magnitude more than the employee, because absent the employee, I am nothing. Absent all those folks that work for Bill Gates, he's nothing. Absent all the engineers, the intellects, the folks that work for Musk, he's nothing. But he has hundreds of billions of dollars. And how did he get that? That is the mathematical formula, or rather, I should call it the bad mathematical formula that runs our economic system, which is in fact a fraud. The stock market is a fraud. I mean, some of us, we're in there because that's what we're built on, but it's a fraud. There's no correlation between the stock market and the value of companies. None. No correlation. That's why a company that just makes software can be so much worth more than a company that has heavy assets like a GM. Makes no sense, right? If that software company goes belly up tomorrow, it has very little hardware, no stuff to exchange into money. Well, GM does. When I tell you we are built on a fraudulent system, that is exactly what I mean. I am going to play your stuff, AVQ, in a little bit. That is exactly what I mean, folks. Okay? Is the Dow Jones Index a fraud? Of course it is. It is absolutely a fraud. Look, I should call it a fraud. I should just call it a casino. That's what I should really call it. A casino. Nothing more than a casino. That's what I'll call it. If that tickles your fancy a little bit better, Mr. Astedian, I will call it a casino. All right. Real quickly, before I go to play some of the shorts from El Señor AVQ, I want to just show you the interaction between Jasmine Crockett and Pam Bondi. I found that to be one of the most colorful parts because she didn't even give her a chance to blow V8. So let's go ahead and play that now, and then we'll continue thereafter.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. But instead, I'm going to ask some very basic questions really quickly of my colleague, Becca Ballant, if she will answer right or wrong, raping children.
Wrong.
Right or wrong, killing random citizens.
Definitely wrong.
Right or wrong, enriching yourself as the sitting president of the United States.
Definitely wrong.
Okay, thank you, because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Our witness who somehow is a lawyer but does not understand how it works with witnesses. I'm not really sure what law school she went to and what all kind of cases she tried, but typically when you come into a space and somebody's a witness, then they sit there and they answer questions instead of asking questions. And then we also have this objection that we use as lawyers called non-responsive when a witness fails to actually answer the question. But nevertheless, let me address the survivors, because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims, they are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. We are currently the laughing stock of the world, partially because of the failed leadership within the DOJ, as we see kings and queens falling everywhere around the world. But we don't know the basics of right and wrong in this country, because it's not about partisanship. And that's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. But nevertheless, let me keep going. My Democratic colleagues have been attacked this entire committee hearing. They have been lied on. And frankly, the American people weren't looking for that. They were looking for answers about the corruption that they see coming from this administration. In the written testimony of this witness, of this particular witness, she stated that when she took office, she had two main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. In fact, your boss, the President of the United States, stated that this administration, quote, took the freedom of speech away. And at your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before, just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly, just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin, just like the case against Tish James was dismissed and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting these journalists. In fact, we know after Georgia Fort and Don Lemon were arrested, we know that there were homes of journalists that were raided. We know that threatened prosecution against students protesting your actions and forced tech companies to remove apps used to track ISIS activities. But let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps, because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, this is a good one. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up, and this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. But there are numerous others, like how the DOJ is attempting to obstruct justice in the investigation of the rogue agents who have murdered American citizens, or how the DOJ seized voter data from Fulton County in an attempt to steal the 2026 midterm elections, or how federal agents have Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and your agency killed the investigation, or how your agency is ready to give the president a $230 million payday, which is unconstitutional. The Constitution is clear. The president shall not receive any payment except his salary while in office. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history, an attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield.
Now, if that was not spot on, I don't know what it was. Let me tell you what I like about progressive fighters. And Jasmine Crockett is progressive. She's not as progressive as, let's say, AOC, or as progressive as Ilhan Omar, or as progressive as our new winner out of Ana Mejia, who's out of New Jersey 11. I'm going to try to get in touch with. Hello, March KJ. How you doing? Great to have you here, beautiful. Now, I want to get Ana Mejia on our show. I interviewed her a couple of years ago at Netroots. Last night I was looking for her number. I couldn't find it. So I'm going to have to go through alternative methods to get to her. But still, Crockett is right there on point with the way she comes across. She doesn't allow bullying, etc. So I tell you what, uh, be careful. She may be the next senator out of the state of Texas. She's leading in the Democratic race, and I think, given if we play the right cards, she could turn out to be the Texas. Hold me on that one. Anyway, it's now Mr. Rudden time. He always goes and looks up some shorts for us that's worth watching, and I clicked on a couple of them that I seem to like. I want to play the one on vaccines, so let's go ahead and do that.
The simplest ways we keep our kids and communities safe: vaccines. And it feels insane to have to say this in 2026, but strong communities start with healthy kids. Newborns too young to be vaccinated, toddlers in daycares, kids in schools, the immunocompromised. And vaccines are among the most closely monitored medical interventions in history. Over the last 50 years alone, they've saved 154 million lives. And 146 million of those were children under 5. And listen, curiosity is valid. Questioning things is valid. And we should be having these conversations with our kids' doctors about the vaccines they need to stay protected. But refusing the validity of scientists and doctors who have dedicated their lives to this, that's irresponsible. And it's clear we have politicians in charge willing to put party over people, but the proof is right in front of us. Measles outbreaks are rising, not because the science changed, but because the misinformation spread like wildfire. And when our leaders create or enable confusion on vaccines, families are the ones who pay the price. This isn't about party, it's about protecting people, and it's super important to trust the consensus of doctors, nurses, public health professionals. Because again, strong communities start with healthy kids. RFK Jr.'s vaccine agenda is putting children at risk, and we need leaders who are willing to stand up to this and put families first. What's one of the simple...
Thank you for that, Radnan. That's a public service announcement. Now, I have another one, but before, let me go ahead and say David Page Ye on Substack. You are absolutely right. Other squad members, Rashida Talib, which I met at Netroots as well, Alyana Presley. I haven't met her in person, but I do want to. Jamal Bowman, yes, he was removed by APAC because he said the wrong thing at the wrong time out of New York. So right about that, but yes, absolutely so. Anyway, folks, Radnin has another one that I want to play. This one, I didn't listen to it, but it has to do with Ring cameras. I want to see if it's something that I thought of when Google found that the video for Miss Guthrie's mother. Let's see if that's what it's going to be about. We'll see.
Did you see the Ring camera Super Bowl ad about finding lost dogs? What an amazing piece of technology. We can use our neighbors' cameras to find our precious furry friends. And the only trade-off is a complete lack of privacy and living in a surveillance state. So here's how to shut off that Orwellian setting, because the Ring app sure doesn't make it obvious. First, open your Ring app and press the menu button in the top left corner. It's the little lines that kind of look like an old-timey prison outfit. Then skip past settings and account settings and devices, because why would it be there? Instead, go to Control Center, because the surveillance state is trying to control us. Again, scroll past all the logical choices, like account management, security, and public safety. Click Search Party, and disable the fuck out of this terrible, terrible idea. I love my dog, and I would absolutely lose my mind if he went missing. In fact, I would do whatever I could to find him, other than willingly participate in handing over all of our comings and goings to a company owned by Jeff Bezos. I would do anything for pups, but I won't do that. No, I won't do that.
Little man with enormous plans.
All right, let me tell you, I want to say something before I move on. Last night I was up late. Well, I'm up late every night. And I was watching TV and they broke in. They were, but it didn't happen last night. Earlier that afternoon, they released the video of Savannah Guthrie's mother, the guy who came to kidnap her. And they said she didn't have a cloud account for her camera. And, so that made it harder to get the video. My first question was, if you have this camera and you don't have a cloud account and you never subscribe or you never enlisted or anything like that, why does Google get a copy of your video? Because they upload it, of course. So from the limited information I have thus far, it seems to me that all these applications, whether you're signed up for service or not, are keeping these things. And the fact that, and again, this is based on what I heard on the news. If I'm wrong, I'll come and correct myself on another day. But what it would be saying is that no matter what, the surveillance state is here, and they are, in fact, keeping that video on the cloud. Because remember, most of these cameras are on the network, and it's no big deal for them to simply upload it. Storage is is not at a premium anymore, so they could do that without a problem. It is something we better be careful of. Look, privacy. If you want your privacy, remember several things. If you have an Alexa at home, it is always listening. My phone is turned on right now. It is always listening. What they're transmitting over those airwaves that we've given them the ability to transmit, we don't know. Even if they say if they got the data, they're not going to do anything about it without a subpoena or whatever, we don't know. So the moral of the story is the following. If you don't want, or if you think you're doing something you definitely don't want folks to know about, you shouldn't have your phone turned on. And even that, even when he shows you how to turn things off, you can't trust that that will actually be turned off for real. And likely the same thing with Alexa and all these things that are always listening, waiting for a command. Remember that. Here is Brother Rudnin's last short. Here it comes, I believe.
You want to know why religious conservatives are capable of ignoring things like the Epstein files? It's because it happens in their churches all the time. So they're conditioned to go ahead and look the other way. That's why. Do you want to know why religious conservatives?
That was short, Michael, but it's so true. That was short. Anyway, folks, we are close to the end of the program. There are a couple of subjects I wanted to go over, what Bernie Sanders had to say about what Trump is talking about. This is the best economy ever. We need to be more forceful in pointing out how bad this economy is. I can take calls for 1 minute. Give me a call, 281-823-7747. Me pueden llamar, si quieren llamar, 281-823-7747. Repeating, 281-823-7747. If you want to call and tell me something, whatever. Folks, thank you all for being here. Love you all. But let me ask you one specific thing. If you like the program, if you understand what we're doing with respect to making sure that we keep the left flank active and not only orderly, but informed, please, please, please consider becoming a paid subscriber of our network. Remember, we don't only do this show, we also do a show at 6 a.m. on KPFT 90.1 FM, meaning we are on live on air, as well as simulcasting here on Substack, on Instagram, and Substack everywhere. So please consider becoming a paid subscriber. That's the only way we can continue doing this. To become a paid subscriber, we just say, please decide to subscribe to our Substack by just hitting that subscribe button and say, yep, I want to become a paid subscriber. Remember, you get to read all my current 5 books online at the Substack platform. But better, I have a new book that's coming out about how we're going to recover after Trump. I was hoping to release that book this month. It may not come out till next month. But anyhow, all of that will be yours to read on Substack for those people who subscribe. So please go ahead and click that button and subscribe. If you don't have that button, go to politicsandright.com/newsletter. politicsandright.com/newsletter. I'm putting it in each chat. Folks, we can't do this without you. You are the one that's going to save democracy, supporting all of us that are out here making sure the progressive message get into the ears of people, into the eyes of people. So, love you all. Email me at info@politicsandright.com, info@politicsandright.com. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.